What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab 134. We are a podcast about Overwatch, but specifically the strategies in the game of Overwatch. We talk here this week about all of the PTR changes. We're going to kick off a little bit more of the discussion with the Bastet event that has kicked off this week, literally a day after we finished recording last week. And also, we have some pretty important discussion points with regards to the armor and the PTR that we're going to be discussing about the future of Overwatch, basically with this one change if it goes to live. My name's Rob. I'm all the way in Japan on a spicy Saturday morning in November, January 12th, whereas this is January 11th, quite late for Andres over on the Georgia area. What's up, dude?
That's right. I'm coming from the past into the future. Find out what's happening and going back.
Bridging the time zones, man. So let's get right into just a couple quick updates for you guys about what's been going on with us. This week, Andres has been kind of got the, how would I say this? The unlucky lotto for group projects. And so that's why this week's episode is going to have to be pretty, probably right around an hour. We'll try to get it there, maybe a little bit shorter, depends on what ends up happening with our discussions and how carried away we get.
Yeah, I've been a little pressed for time. I've been finishing up school. I'm like in the last stretch of it. I got 1 more month left and I'll be done with it. But yeah, unfortunately I got dealt the hard mode hand on our last project.
Is a good way to say it.
So I've been having to do a lot of work.
Yep. Well, I have a little update for you guys on what I've been doing. I haven't really been playing a whole lot of Overwatch after the Christmas holiday break because I was just playing with like Andres and some people in the podcaster group to get back into Diamond in the new season. But it's been really hard to be motivated to like push further in Diamond. I don't know why. I just like it. The decay makes it really, really difficult. If I want to push, I can't just like push over like 2 or 3 days. I have to push like consistently throughout a week. And I also need to find time when people are going to be online in my time zone to do that, which is really hard. So what I ended up doing is I joined an Oceanic server this last week called the Amateur Oceanic Esports, if you guys are looking for it. I know that we had a few of you guys showing up for game night this last month. And through that, I found a looking for team / looking for members channel, and I got picked up for a trial with a team. So I'm going to try to see when in the next couple weeks when that trial happens and how much planning that these guys do, because it is really small, but I'm not sure what will happen. But it's just like a Diamond Masters team, so I'll go through tryouts, and I told them that I could ring for them if they needed a ringer.
That's pretty cool.
We'll see how things pan out. Yeah. And as far as the game night for January, it'll be a little bit different because the 31st of January is on a Thursday. So we'll actually be on the 25th this month. So January 25th is when the next game night for Omnic Lab will be. And we have Top Score Solutions back to help us out with sponsorship. So Omnic Lab is presented in large part by Top Score Solutions, an esports-oriented community for business, education, and analytics. If you're looking to develop businesses, services, or anything of the like, and you just like creating content about gaming and esports, they're here to help. Their flagship podcast is called the Esports Business Podcast, and you can find it on your normal channels of Podbean and iTunes. Additionally, they run a blog for topscoresolutions.com and a regular segment called In Case You Missed It for a brief news update. Be sure to check out their Discord community if you have more questions you want to follow up, or you just want to hang out in their community to discuss esports and gaming. Don't forget that all of the links are on topscoresolutions.com. Also, I know that last week we mentioned that Andres had some cool talks with Switch from omnicmeta.com. You guys can check his stuff out at his website, omnicmeta.com, or talk to him in our Discord with tag Switch or the Switch Fox on Twitter. You can use our Humble Bundle monthly affiliation link in our show notes, or you can type !humble in our Discord or in our Twitch chat anytime. That's going to do it for all of our little announcements, but we have some news about the Bastet event. Andres, have you been keeping up with this week despite your busyness?
Yeah. I haven't been able to unlock the skin yet, which I'm hoping after I finish this project, I can dedicate a little bit of time to that. But it does look super awesome. I like this way of unlocking skins a little bit. It kind of incentivizes people to play the game, and then you get a badass reward out of it. I'm all in for it.
Yeah, I am almost done with the quick play games that I wanted to run this week. My wife actually caught the flu this week, so I had a bit of a crazy week trying to do catch up to get here for the show. But the Best Stet event has been awesome. I've been keeping up with Fran and Emong, who are two of the main streamers for Twitch drops this time around, and they've been streaming at Blizzard HQ, and we had some really cool stuff with regards to that. But before we get there, I need to let you guys know what's going on if you haven't been engaged. The event starts from the 8th, which is so it's still now in full swing, and it will end on the 21st. So get your hands on all of these rewards before then. You only need to watch a maximum of 6 hours on these streams to get all 5 of the sprays, and they happen in increments of 2 hours. So 2, 4, and 6. You can get 1, 3, and then 5 of the sprays. Also, if you want to play in the game, you can get a reward every 3 wins in quick play, arcade, or competitive mode. The rewards are a Bastet, or a basically the guardian in Egyptian lore and mythology, which is the cat. If you've read the Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan, who is also the guy who made the Percy Jackson series, they have Bastet as a main feature in that book, and so you'd be very familiar with that.
That's very cool.
But you can get an icon, a victory pose, and then obviously the skin, and the skin is the best one, of course.
Yeah, the skin is super, super cool. You know, this reminds me a little bit, and I don't know how people feel about this. I personally thought it is a cool feature, but in Fortnite, they have this similarly with their seasons or whatever they're called in there, where like the more you play, the more you level up during the season. And if you play a certain number of games, you unlock like their most like badass skin, like for that season. And I wonder if Overwatch could benefit from a system like that. Maybe for participation in comp, you get certain rewards. And right now, you get a spray and you get a like icon for your
player icon.
Player icon. But I mean, does anyone ever wear those or use those? I feel like unless you unlock like the top 500 animated icon, you're probably like just never gonna use those.
Yeah, then if you have the top 500, you get the, or GM or whatever, you get the other stuff. But
right, the top 500 is cool because it's very unique. It's very animated. Cool. As the second you put it out there, it's animated. Like you let everyone know, like, dude, I've been to top 500, so like it has some value attached to it. But the other icons for just participating and the spray is just like whatever. But what if you played like 30 games in comp in a season, you unlocked like a cool skin. If you played like 300 games, you unlock like the most badass skin. And technically that would be like one or like 5 games. I mean, there'll be a lot of games, but like you get what I'm saying. You have
they would figure some way to quantify it,
right?
Yeah, I like that idea. I personally do think that pushing players to multiple ways to earn the reward is a good way to do it, because it's just like Blizzard, financially speaking, doesn't care if you are playing a specific mode. They just want to make sure that you're playing, and you're playing what you want to play, right? They want the competitive players to go to competitive. They want the people to play casual and hang out. They go to quick player arcade. They want people to do that. So if you want to do those things, then they're trying to incentivize you to just pick back up the game is kind of the idea, or to continue playing the game if you're already there. That's kind of the idea. And with competitive, the separating factor with that would be what you said. It's the icon, it's the spray, and it's also the competitive points to get golden weapons. But is that enough, right? Like, can we get competitive geared skins for each hero that maybe you can unlock? Is it that much different than a golden gun?
And they've said before they don't want to like put too many rewards in competitive, like the golden guns. They've been like kind of back and forth with saying, we kind of regret adding the golden guns because they want competitively at least to be like all about the competition. Like you're not there to level up or unlock things or any flair. You're there because you want to improve yourself, and I guess that's kind of how they've tried to keep it so far. But honestly, having a cool skin or something that shows in your account that you put a lot of time and effort into a season, for example, like that. I feel like that feels good, right? If you have something like, man, I really went to town on this season, and at least you
Mm,
have like this badass skin for like one of your favorite characters or something. I
right,
think that would be cool.
right. You know what they could do is do something that they mirror top 500 with in any rank, because in top 500 you can't even get the rank unless you've played 50 games that season. You can be GM, you can be the highest possible rank in the game, but you not have top 500 because you didn't play 50 games and
Mm-hmm.
verify your account yet, right? So if they did something like that for any rank to motivate you to, put in 50, put in 100 games in a season, then that could be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But let's keep the ball moving here, because Fran and Emong were actually able to sit down and talk with Jeff Kaplan during the scope of this event. And we got some really cool updates here. I'm going to pull open a link from Reddit. Special thanks and shout out to Grand Queso Overwatch, who put together this copy pasta from forums onto the subreddit for us to read. But the things here, I'm just literally going to read them out, and then we'll talk about each one. So the first thing is on Emong's stream. They said that balance changes were made with strong consideration to goats and Reaper changes, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Jeff Kaplan emphasized the little secret is not a new map, but an Ana Bastet promotion. Sorry, emphasizes the little secret is not a new map. Okay, so the little secret that they had for the last patch change, when he said, hey, there's a little surprise at this next patch, is the Bastet event. They're not super happy with
Okay.
competitive play right now, is something that they said as a quote, which is kind of counterintuitive, because they've said, we're happy with it, we're not. Different devs say they're not happy with it. Other devs say that they are. So it seems like there's a little bit of contention there. There are reasons why SR goes up and down that we don't elaborate on. It's good to assess your skill level as it is, but it's not a lot of progression to it, which is what Andres and I have said many times. It's not a progression-based system. It is a skill-based progression system, right? So you progress as your skill increases.
Yeah, it's about
One of the
improving
biggest
yourself rather than about leveling or grinding a certain reward.
getting rewards, right? One of the biggest challenges with Overwatch period of the Overwatch period is that this is a team game, which causes problems because players race to play certain heroes. Jeff Kaplan typically plays the tanks when he plays Overwatch casually, despite playing all of the heroes. Jeff Kaplan wants to find many ways where players can find the heroes they want without any abuse from their teammates. Kaplan explains why solutions are locking competitive to 6-man stacks because it causes more problems than what it solves. Jeff Kaplan explains that Sorry, go ahead, Andres. If you're
I was
say
just gonna
something there.
ask that last one because I didn't quite get it. You said they haven't tried the 6-man group like defined queue because it brings more problems.
They said they explain why solutions like locking competitive to 6 stacks only cause more problems than what they solve.
Oh, gotcha.
So this is why they haven't locked the game to 6-stack queue versus,
Like you can only queue a
solo
6
duo
for
stuff.
competitive.
Yeah. Right. So the next thing here is he explains that different queue types, solo queue, team queue, doesn't necessarily solve the problems that they intend to solve. Introducing solo queue would kill all forms of the grouping. In pursuit of the idea of role queue, they're strongly considering the factor of how the actual skill of each hero or role a player has. I don't understand the crabs thing, which I'm not really sure if that's a meme or something that they're referencing.
Probably.
So any more comments here, Andres, before we go into what he talked with Fran about?
I think just it's overall interesting, right? Because they're looking at a game very critically, and I think that everybody has a solution to offer to the game, but most solutions are only partial solutions. Like it'll solve a problem for a particular section of the game, but like you said, it'll bring problems to like another sector of the game. It's a big beast to solve at this point. I was hearing about the idea, and I do agree that maybe locking competitive to only 6 is not the best way to go because there's just too much variability, right? Like you can't predict how your players can queue, how many friends they have, and if you're putting the floor like of requirements that high. Like you have to have 6 people. It's not easy, even for us that have like a community of people that hangs around and play Overwatch. And it's easy to kind of like put like uh, an emergency thing, like, hey guys, we need a team, come together, and everybody comes together. It's not as easy for most of the people out there. So I don't know. I think it would lock a lot of people out of playing competitive. But what if they did timed events? What if like for a week it was like 6-man competitive queue as much as you can this week, get some rewards for queuing with your team. And I don't know, maybe you get like some competitive points, kind of how they have like those deathmatch seasons, but maybe have like an event where it's like 6 stack season, and maybe you can bring those like once every competitive season or something to kind of like keep things interesting and incentivize that sort of team play. We've talked about guilds before. What if that system was like locked to guilds, like competitive was still you can join however you want? But
They did talk something about the guild system, which I'll just go ahead and jump into because you transitioned there
yeah,
really well. So on Fran's stream, it says, we want guilds to be about playing Blizzard games together. Sounds like guilds will be expanded to a multi-game network, and they're not sure
oh,
if this would happen, though. And also, I'll even throw out a disclaimer that is not in this post, but from what it sounded like in the language of the actual conversation, was that the reason that guilds aren't in the game is because they don't want to shoehorn don't want to create an entire new system that overlaps with the BattleNet team that they would have to work together with to actually create something like this for inside of Overwatch. And they would much rather create a guild system where you can play anything in BattleNet. And if BattleNet is currently working on something like this, then they probably don't want to overstep their bounds there. You know what I mean?
no,
So
makes sense.
that being said, there's a couple things that I want to say about basically just all of this stuff in general. Is it's just really, really good for me to see over the last like 2 months of all of this goats talk, right? And the community like complaining or talking about certain things, is because for whatever reason, this cycle of complaints, a lot of players and coaches and teams and, just content creators are really putting forth a lot of effort to provide Blizzard with constructive feedback on possible solutions that they want to try. And I don't think we've really seen a whole lot of that. I think it's just mostly like players just like whining such and such is broken. Whereas this cycle, it feels like a lot of players and community members are just really geared to say, hey, let's really push this agenda. Instead of saying, I hate this, let's try this. Like, please give us this or give us this. It's instead of, I hate X or this sucks. You know what I mean? So I feel like people are getting a little bit more proactive of providing solutions. But in our haste, as with most people doing armchair development, we don't really have a whole lot of, hey, I understand that this is exactly what I want, but they don't really understand the ramifications for asking something, and they don't also understand what that means that the team or teams that this affects have to do as a result. And the guild
Hmm.
system being kind of the chief example here, right? It's like, oh yeah, let's get guilds in Overwatch. That seems like a good thing. It's like, okay, we'll dedicate all of our resources to this. Well, that affects more than just the Overwatch team. Like this actually affects their BattleNet team. Like this is a whole group of employees and workers doing something like that.
Well, it makes sense, especially if BattleNet themselves were like thinking, "Hey, let's add a guild system." Because honestly, a guild system for BattleNet would work pretty well. It's already in WoW, for example. It's added into things like D3 with communities. But one thing that I've noticed is, for example, we get like a good group of friends playing Overwatch, but when we go to WoW, it's not like we're in the same guild, right? We would have to find each other there, form a guild in WoW, then like, okay, we're there. If we want to play D3 together, oh, okay, well, we have to form our own guild in D3 and then like invite everyone. It would honestly be pretty nice if we could just have like one guild in BattleNet, and that same guild would work for any of their games, right? You would be in the Omnic Lab guild, whether you're in Overwatch, WoW, or whatever game you're
Yeah,
playing.
and they have something like this. It's called BattleNet communities, but for whatever reason, people aren't really utilizing it, us ourselves included. We've made something like this early on, and it's just people aren't using it. It's not that people aren't there to use it because you have to use BattleNet in order to get integrated, but the fact of the matter is, sometimes Blizzard makes really, really good tools in one of their teams, and people just don't use them for whatever reason.
That's true. Although I know a few people who do use like the BattleNet comms and the communities. I think we're just
Mm-hmm.
spoiled because we're used to being in Discord and we already have everything set up over there with
Mm-hmm.
everything is so customizable. And for us
They
that
give you
we've
more
spent the
control.
time, yeah, for us that we've spent the time like building on that, like obviously we're gonna stay there. But I know some friends that have no idea what Discord is, right? Like they're mostly like
Yeah.
console
Yeah.
gamers. Sometimes they play on the PC. And it's honestly nice for them having that system already built into BattleNet. Um, because then they don't have to mess with Discord or anything. It's just like, hey, the comm system is here. Let's do it. So you're right. We themselves don't use it, but I think that some people out there do.
So I just want to cover our bases just on the back end here. I didn't say that they confirmed that they're going to do guild systems in any stretch. I just said that if they were going to do it, it would be inside of the BattleNet system because it would be other, they would have to dedicate resources to two different teams. The reason why the guild system existed in Warcraft and in Diablo is because those games systems predate BattleNet. So you can't have something in BattleNet if it was already in a game as a major feature prior to BattleNet's existence. That's why those guild systems are already there.
Right. And Silver Loki asks if this guild system would extend to Activision titles or Blizzard only. And my guess is if the system is in BattleNet, then it would be in the hands of people like Bungie to just, interfacing with that system and maybe adding it to their games because they're already in BattleNet. So I'm guessing every feature that is in there, you would be able to also use for any of the games that are in there. But it would be on Bungie's hand in the case of Destiny or Activision in the game in the terms of Call of Duty and their development teams to kind of integrate that
Or work with the BattleNet team that they have associations with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go back to the Fran stuff here. With regards to the posts or the discussions there, they also said Hero 30 is progressing very nicely right now. They want, let's see, Overwatch Archives event is coming back this year, and you might see there might be something cool on the horizon to be looking forward to in it. I don't think that there is a meta expiration date, but the players do. Is what Jeff said, and I think that was really well said. There are times I think that the community, he says, "What the hell do you players want?" He's like, if you have goats, is like, oh, it's just gonna be double sniper, and it's like, but we had dive for all of this time, so take away dive. Is like, well, what do you guys want? Basically, it's like if you take something away and something else comes in, you're just gonna complain about whatever the new thing is. So and
I
the other
think
thing
it's
too,
it's an endless cycle with that, right?
yeah,
Because nobody is gonna like the same thing. They have millions of players, and some people are probably happy with goats. Some people were happy with dive. Some people are fine with double sniper. But the people who are not fine with that are the people who are going to complain, right? Like if I'm a tank
mm-hmm.
player and I just enjoy goats, I hate just range damage that makes my life hard, and goats is like the thing right now, like a Reinhardt player, like it might be like the time of your life. You know what I mean? When it goes
Well,
back
you
to
can see
dive,
that
you could be
when
like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like playing Winston. I like staying in my Rhine. You know what I mean? So then you might be like, well, I'm gonna complain.
yeah, I mean, they also said too that it's just like if you go to the forums and look at people complaining about goats, people use specific labels to say what they're going to complain about as like a topical thing, and then you read what they're saying and people are like complaining about fundamentally different things that they have issue with inside of goats. Some people are like, I hate goats because this, and the other person's like, no, that's fine, but I hate goats because of this. It's like they're picking and choosing little aspects of goats that affects them. And Jeff even said something that I thought was really funny. He's like, oh man, it was a clipped and reposted to death on Twitter, but he was saying something like, we have a lot of players in Overwatch who say that they hated dive and that dive is meta, but he's like, let's say you're anywhere south of Diamond, that's not meta. Picking those heroes doesn't equivocate playing the meta, because the meta is how you play those specific heroes in Overwatch. It's not a MOBA in the sense that you can pick specific heroes and be locked into them, and that's the meta or the commonality of what's competitive.
Right. It's very
What's competitive
fluid.
in Overwatch is how you're playing those specific heroes in tandem. If you have a D.Va and a Winston splitting and running over the map like crazy, that means you're running D.Va and Winston with a bunch of mobile heroes, not playing them optimally. You're not playing dive. You know what I mean? So when people do something like that, it gets to be pretty exacerbated when people complain. They think that they're playing the meta when they're not. So there's this big skill disparity that players don't like to admit exists, I think, because they think that they're, able to run what the pros are running because that's what they're trying to do. And if you're trying to do something, you're saying that's what we're doing instead of
Yeah.
like attempting it, right?
I think it is a back and forth, right? Like we can't say Blizzard's
Yeah.
good. They shouldn't like touch any of the heroes because obviously some heroes do need a touch up here and there. Some of them get a little bit out of hand. Some of them kind of fall out of favor with new patches, whereas new heroes come out, they might get pushed out. And in order to preserve a certain semblance of balance, every once in a while, I feel like Blizzard should intervene. That being said, though, I do think that at the community itself needs to kind of like self check a little bit when it's just like a complaint out of passion. Like, is Brigitte really overpowered, or you just don't like playing against her? And there's a fine line, right? Like, yeah, we don't want to make heroes that are like terribly unfun to play. But I think that also a big part of it is people don't really take the time to learn and adapt to play against things. The meta is always evolving in Overwatch, and every once in a while, you will be pushed out of your comfort zone. It's happened to me before. When I started playing the game, I played a lot of Soldier and McCree, which once the dive meta came around, I couldn't really play those heroes anymore. I was getting destroyed all the time, and climbing was really hard when you have like Tracer, Genji, Winston, D.Va just like jumping on your poor McCree with almost no mobility all the time. So I had to learn other things, right? I learned characters like Widow, where I could maybe still exploit my hit scan, but be at a safer distance where they would have to super overcommit to get to me. Or I started learning characters like Tracer too. You know, if you can't beat him, join him. Now that the GOATS
Mm.
meta is coming into play, it has been pretty much like the same thing for me. I can't really get away with playing certain heroes, especially if I'm going up against a team who's playing goats the right way. You're just not gonna be able to beat him, or you're gonna make it hard mode on yourself. Like, yeah, maybe you can use that Genji to destroy him, but it's gonna take so much effort, and your team is gonna have to like just throw everything at you, nano boost, Zarya bubbles, for you to even get a chance at beating them. Well, instead, hey, maybe I'll learn some Zarya, maybe I'll learn some Brigitte myself, maybe I'll learn some Lucio, and if I can get good at those roles, then I can play in this meta. And you don't have to complain about it, right? Just enjoy what the game is offering at the moment. The flow, it's just a different vibe of a different flavor.
It's
It'll keep evolving.
yeah. Yeah, and it's important to note that it does matter where you are when you're playing these certain things, because if you're trying to play, even if both teams are playing the exact same heroes on both sides, you can have a complete stomp by having them just switch heroes and be better at them. You know what I mean? Like if somebody is playing off meta versus meta, we see this in our game nights. If you have like two players that are highly skilled and all things are given basically equal on all skill levels except for those one or two players that are really good on a team, they can literally pick whatever they want and kill you over and over and over and over again because the skill disparity is there. So hero picks and meta no longer matter because meta is how you play the heroes, not what heroes you pick.
I also think there's this big perception on meta, and
It really has.
the reality of things is that there's so many things in Overwatch that are always viable at the same time. Even now that like goats have been super overpowered, there's a bunch of things that are still viable. The problem is this: pros are playing in Overwatch League. They're playing goats all the time. Contenders, you see goats all the time. This is what people are looking towards. YouTube video makers, like your Overwatch, is talking about like goats all day, how powerful it is, and all the other
Inundated
content
with
creators.
daily content, man.
Right. This is what it's out. And it has this certain effect that people start thinking like, oh, goats is the only thing that is being played. If you're not playing goats, then you're doing it wrong. And not only that, for example, when a comp becomes the superior comp and is being played a lot in Overwatch League, for example, there's going to be a lot of guides. There's going to be a lot of attention. There's going to be a lot of focus into learning that composition, teaching that composition. Some coaches will come out and be like, hey, you can do this. Hey, you can do that. So there's so much discussion around these compositions that it like trickles down right into competitive. And then people in competitive starts assuming this behavior as well. And the reality is, when you're queuing up randomly with a bunch of strangers, it's hard to come up with a strategy like right then on the spot, especially if it's like a creative strategy that people are not used to doing. Plus, you never know what you're going to get. It's like rolling the dice. You might get like 3 tank players, 2 support players, 1 DPS. Sometimes you get like 4 DPS, 2 tank players. You don't really know. So it's too hard to predict that, and it's easy just to grab the low-hanging fruit, right? Like the composition everyone's talking about, the thing that's going around the forums. Let's just play that. Everyone knows how to play it. We know it's overpowered, which doesn't always equal you winning, but it's harder to innovate on the fly when you're queuing up randomly. It's easier to just play what everyone else is playing.
Yeah, I agree. And Jeff said it pretty well here. It's just the players are in the competitive level are going to try to optimize stuff, right? Like they're always going to try to optimize it. They're all trying to be the best. They're trying to figure out what is strong at the moment, what synergizes together the best at the highest level. And so that's what they're going to play. And there's something that we had said, as well as a lot of other creators had said in a long time ago, where when you're playing games in any stretch, people pick what is both the strongest and the easiest to perform. Look at goats, right? There's 2 heroes in that whole comp that do not require a whole lot of aim. It's Reinhardt and Brigitte. and they don't really require a whole lot of anything besides being close to them. It's very easy to perform, and it's also very strong. So what you want to do in Overwatch is they try to find what's the easiest thing to perform, as well as how strong it is, and they have like this weird like lineup thing where both of these 2 things work in tandem, and there's a sweet spot in the middle, and that's where people find. There may be something super really crazy that you can run with like Sombra, Doomfist, Orisa, and Bastion. I don't know. Like maybe that's like a hidden meta that actually breaks everything. It's the strongest thing in the game, but because it's too hard to get your skill to a certain level to perform it, it's not good enough, because you can play something that's 1 or 2, 3, 4 rungs down the ladder as far as power level is concerned, and it doesn't require or ask a whole lot of you to do it.
Right. Big shout out to Blazing Bob for the 12 months subscription, dude. Thank you so much. And also, let's address this from Tenacious Diva. He was saying that Blizzard announced they have about 6 hero in the works that are somewhat playable. He's a little bit disappointed that the release schedule hasn't been a little bit faster. And compared to certain MOBAs, Blizzard's hero release schedule is very slow. We get 3 heroes every year, basically, since the game has come out. That's sort of been like the standard, and I don't think they're increasing that anytime soon. I personally don't mind it. I know that the game does take a while to like get new content, especially now that we're not getting new events. The game has been a little bit of the same for a while, and the new heroes are a big shakeup. I agree, but they're a huge shakeup, and I think that adding several heroes too quick just is not healthy for the game. Just look at certain heroes like Anna and Doomfist. They were terrible when the game came out, and it wasn't because the hero themselves were terrible. It was just because nobody knew how to use them. People thought they were bad because nobody had developed the skills, the mechanics, and the strategy to work these heroes into the meta. But a few months into it, and it took a few months. We're talking like over 2-3 months, and even like 5 months into them being out. People were still figuring out these heroes. So I personally like the release schedule. I know that for some people out there, they would like a few more to keep the roster going, but I don't know. Overwatch is such a hard game to learn, and there's so much to practice. I'm barely half competent on like 10 heroes in this game out of the entire roster. So
Or at least you feel that way the more heroes that come out, yeah. And again,
Hmm.
remember, it's still not a MOBA because you're not locked into only that one hero and it can get picked or banned away. I mean, that hero being a consideration at any point during the game, every time you die or need to go run back to the spawn room, you can go and choose that hero. You can choose it. So it makes the heroes a little bit more dynamic. And then pretty much every new hero that they've announced, when it's been perceived as weak, has just been underplayed or not played in the right way for a couple weeks to months. And then almost all of them, outside of I think Orisa, every single one and maybe Hammond hasn't received that much of a change besides like some big bugs that they had when they shipped them, has been like nerfed at some point over their like first year of being in existence cycle, like
Absolutely.
heavily nerfed.
I
So
do.
let's wrap up here
I was gonna say I
with a
do
couple
agree
more
with his
things.
sentiment of I wish there was a few more things coming out, not in the form of heroes. I think that the hero release schedule is fine, but I do wish that there was a few more features, more events like the 6 versus 6 or like the occasional deathmatch competitive that they do. Like those are okay. Like if this was a little bit more often, or we were talking earlier in the show, like uh a season long event that allows you to unlock like really cool stuff by playing the game in a certain way. I don't know, something to keep you a little bit more engaged, to feel like things are coming a little bit faster. Something slowed down inside of the team, and I don't know if it had to do with releasing Overwatch League and changing their focus, or Blizzard going through a big shift this year. Who knows? But they have definitely slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, so let's wrap up everything here and then go into the armor changes. So here's what we have at the end of Fran's discussions with Jeff. He says that he thought that Overwatch League Season 1 was very fun to watch throughout the entire season. He wants to provide the experience that each player can control, the experience that they want to have. He explained a little bit about why LFG works and why investing a little bit more time in more time results in better quality experience. So is encouraging more people to use the LFG thing, and people saying certain things about why they're not using LFG is basically a misnomer and a myth, with regards to queue times in particular. No massive changes are coming to competitive season anytime soon. There is stuff in the works, but it's very complicated. We have some significant changes that we want to make, but it's not anytime soon. Very far away. The main issue with making changes in competitive play touches on the matchmaker, and the matchmaker is one of the most complex pieces of systems from an engineering standpoint. And we have some big plans to improve ranked, but we need more time.
I was thinking about the matchmaker, and I was thinking about the 6-man groups. I know this is a topic that Frito from Your Overwatch brings up a lot, and I kind of agree with him a little bit in this one. He talks about how it would be cool if in the matchmaker 6-stack groups wouldn't be like disincentivized, and disincentivized I mean in the sense that the matchmaker wouldn't purposely make it a little bit harder for 6 stacks groups. Like we know that when you queue up a 6, the matchmaker tries to favor the enemy team if they're not a 6-man group as well, to increase their SR. Their average SR is going to be a little higher than your 6-man group to compensate for the fact that you're queuing together, that you're probably going to have more coordination, etc. But a big part of the time, this seems like a big punishment, because sometimes these 6-man groups it's not like they've been practicing for weeks or months in advance, right? I think hitting competitive queues. Sometimes they're just formed on the spot. For example, with the looking for group tool, people that have never played together, they're just like going in for it. And if you get matched against another 6-stack, cool. If you don't, then hopefully your coordination can beat like the slight level disparity. And it's not a huge lot. That I can't speak right now. Sorry, it's not a huge lot, but it makes a difference, I think. And I think that if they didn't have this penalty, playing as 6-man groups would be more incentivized at this point.
I'm not sure I could even get on base with a discussion to talk about this right now, given how much stuff we have, but I can see where you're coming from. Because, like, personally, I do think them favoring coordination over a arbitrary number that fluctuates often is fine. But it does feel like, because the matchmaker is also equating for how much time you're waiting in queue, that, like, the longer my queue times, typically the games, like, where they're basically saying, you're going to get in a team that's closer in skill level, or it's going to be more randoms and a higher skill level. I feel like they could do a little bit of a better job with the longer queue time ones, but the shorter queue time ones definitely feel more, closely matched. I mean, there's sometimes when we play against a team like 2 or 3 times in a 3 stack, and I love it when that happens, especially when you're not losing to them every game. Or when you get stomped by them twice and you get matched on a third time and you're just like, oh man, we're gonna win this time. You know what I mean?
I do
Like,
like
'cause
when
that's happened
sometimes
a
you get the
lot.
rematch in competitive
Yeah,
when both teams are queuing
I
around the same
really like
times.
that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right. So let's get into PTR. Okay. So I'm just gonna actually do it a little bit different than what we even planned in the pre-show because we are strapped for time. I'm gonna just list all of the changes and then we'll discuss them. And Andres, you'll have first crack on opinions. So first up, we have Brigitte has Rally's duration of the effect down to 30 seconds. Okay, so this means that Rally's duration of not having infinite armor now, basically meaning you get to the cap of how much armor you can have, and then you just have it until it goes away or you die or you lose that armor. Then now that total time that you get the armor from Brigitte's Rally is expired after 30 seconds. So you still get it for a long time. You still get the effect of Rally being powerful, but it's not going to be permanent anymore. Diva's Matrix is now having a cooldown between its use increased from 1 second to 2 seconds. So now if you see the Matrix and the Matrix stops, they have to wait a full 2 seconds before they can use it again. Reaper, shotgun, the Reapening, lifesteal, passive, whatever language makes it work for you. The lifesteal component has been increased to 50% of damage dealt. So instead of 30%. So this is a 20% boost. And I believe prior it was doubled from 15. So it was like 15 to 30, 30 to 50. So they've almost doubled it twice. Yeah, if this was 60%, it would be doubled twice. But there is a GIF in the show notes if you want to go check out how much health you can get off of a Reaper hitting a Roadhog, because he not only kills a Roadhog and melts him very quickly because of shotguns at close range, but he goes from 8 health to full in about 2 shots. So pretty impressive stuff. And there's also a kill feed update where they are now displaying a few different things with regards to compression. They're making the kill feed like smaller in the box, each line item. And then they're also showing the Matrix as an icon and when it eats something in the kill feed, which I thought was an excellent change.
Yeah, that is very nice.
And the last thing, again, is what we're going to be talking about today is the armor. So let me explain. How armor worked until this cycle is you would always lose 5 damage on every instance of damage. Okay, so if you're using a shotgun, you would lose 5 damage off of each pellet. If you're using a Sombra machine gun, each one of those individual hits, you would lose 5 total damage. Unless the damage of that single piece of damage source was lower than 10. It would be half. So you would take 50% hit to how much total damage you would do to armor if it was below 10. So what they're doing now is they're reducing the threshold to 3 instead of 5, which means if your damage is 6 or below is when you're going to be in the threshold of halving your damage. So it's kind of complicated to understand. So this is what I want you to think about when you're thinking about this type of change, especially for all tiers of play. That's what we're trying to get this across to you guys. If you're using heroes like Sombra, Reaper, Torbjorn's right click, Zarya Beam, Symmetra Beam, or even Ana, who has one shot that hits damage in 3 different points, or even just Orisa's machine gun that just goes constant. If one of those little things, like it's a pellet or an instance of the beam damage, the total damage is more than 6, you're only losing 3 damage out of that one part of damage. Okay? But if it's a pellet that does 6 damage itself, or sorry, if it does like 5 damage, you're only losing half of that, which is 2.5 damage.
Yeah. So this change is very interesting because it's a change that it feels very targeted at increasing the amount of damage that people with spread like Reaper, Tracer, people that fire stream of bullets, right? Like Soldier 76, like Sombra, and especially the ones that have lower damage thresholds, like Sombra, for example. Because heroes like McCree are not going to feel this very much. McCree's, even if you're at like a medium to far range, you're dealing more than 6 damage per shot, at least like 30 damage. So you're only getting like a 3 damage reduction from him. You're not going to notice this too much in him or Widowmaker unless
that's
you're
by
shooting.
design.
Unless you're shooting with your SMG. Widow's going to feel a change with the SMG, not so much with her actual sniper rifle.
Yeah.
So it's
So
really
keep that in mind.
interesting.
If you're using like big single sources of damage like Hanzo, Widowmaker, Zarya right click, Reinhardt hitting things, Brigitte hitting things, all of those like big sources of damage that are over like 15 to 20 sources of damage, you're not really going to feel this. And also, I wanted to highlight this because I got lost in the dross of this. All of this damage is only getting boosted a little bit when you're hitting armor. So you're still doing less than your total usual damage, right? Armor's still reducing your damage. It's just by less. So
Much less.
armor, yeah. So
Tracer
it's gonna help you, but
Tracer, for example, is going to benefit this greatly because going back to the example of McCree, if you hit somebody for full damage, which is 75, just like a regular body shot, no headshot, just 75 damage, you only get 3 damage reduction from that, so you hit him for 72 if you're hitting armor. But Tracer, she's firing a round of pellets, like a barrage of pellets, each time she's firing at one of the armor tanks. Depending how far you are, you might be hitting these tanks for like 6 damage a pellet sometimes, which means that before your damage would get reduced quite significantly. If each of your pellets like hit him for 8, for example, your damage would get reduced to like 3 per pellet. Now, if you're hitting for 8 a pellet, your damage is only getting reduced by 3. So you're hitting for 5 a pellet. And it ramps up quite quick because you're firing so many pellets that those extra 2 damage points that you're dealing for pellet like quickly become into like 20, 30 more damage, which is the difference between being able to like finish one of these heroes or not.
yeah. And the other thing too about this change is sometimes you're going to feel this and sometimes you're not because it affects both body shot and headshot in Overwatch. For example, Tracer. Let's use Tracer as our key example. Tracer has the 2 little pistols, pulse pistols that shoot crazy fast damage. But if you're shooting in the belly of a Roadhog versus the headshot of a Roadhog, your damage is not as high per instance of damage. So I have a little graph from poster Clumsily in the show notes if you want to take a look from the Reddit. Tracer's damage is completely unchanged. And potentially lower. There's no boost in her damage to armored targets unless you're hitting headshots. And in that case, if you're hitting headshots, you're at a 28.5 to 29% boost in how much damage you're doing. So if you're getting
30%.
within your 10-meter damage of optimal damage range and you're hitting a ton of headshots on tanks and stuff, I feel like that's just going to be a force. So Tracer might be one of the guys, or one of the heroes that you're going to want to choose against tanks again. And it's not even for pulse bomb anymore. It's just literally constant blink in, shoot a bunch of times, blink out. So it's pretty crazy. And the chat's been going pretty crazy about the Reaper thing. So let's address this here, because people in general, I'm going to share my opinion here, Andres, and you can feel free to disagree. Even as you listeners, you can feel free to disagree. Just, I don't think you're right. Reaper getting a big boon to his lifesteal changes 0 of his problems. So if the Reaper is going to be better or worse than he was prior, then you need to understand that the claim you're making is that Reaper's survivability is directly tied to him being in the fight while shooting. And I would say that that's completely wrong. If you're thinking Reaper needs a change to be buffed in the sense that he needs to shore up his weaknesses, I don't think that any of Reaper's weaknesses have been adjusted at all. He's still slow. He still makes a freaking announcement when he teleports. He's still completely immobile for headshots. He's still garbage when you're trying to shoot him at range or even medium range. You can't like not kill him. He's super easy to kill. The thing that Reaper is going to do is when you're running immobile comps, especially without Lucio, and you have a Reaper in tow, and you're playing against a bunch of tanks. The tanks should not be able to survive Reaper by design. And currently, Reaper is not that great against tanks, or he's not like amazing against them when he should be. And so this whole thing is basically putting his damage in a way that when he's life stealing against a tank that's doing comparable damage in short range, Reaper's gonna kill you. Okay. So that's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to say if Reaper's at close range, he's gonna kill you. And that's like they're basically buffing something that Reaper should have been able to do, in my opinion. And so I don't really think Reaper's going to see much of a change, especially at high elos. And people saying that he's going to be a threat, much more of a big threat at lower elos, I feel like doesn't change anything. He's already a threat there. I've played in silver games. I've played in gold games. I've played in plat games. Reaper, when he's there, is still a threat because people don't understand that you don't stand next to Reaper when you're on a tank and live. It just doesn't happen. And if you're expecting to live next to a Reaper and you're a tank, then I don't know what to tell you. He's supposed to kill you.
Fair. I am gonna disagree a little bit because just I've been watching some of the people playing Reaper now, and he is actually pretty insane. It's actually quite insane how much health he can heal. And if you're a person that is not only decent at Reaper but good, and you're hitting headshots constantly with him, unless you're getting stun locked or unless you're getting focused down by a variety of heroes, you're not going to go down. It's like as simple as that. Like you look at the way he can heal right now, and Blizzard basically made it that if he is now closing range to you and you're alone, you're not killing Reaper. It's just as simple as that. He's so insane that McCree has to be almost in the appropriate range to do flash fan the hammer. If you don't finish Reaper like immediately with flash fan the hammer, he actually now has a chance to just do one shot on you and come back. Not you won't be able to win that duel. Like if you're just slightly far away and you miss like 1 or 2 bullets with your fan the hammer and maybe some damage fell off, you couldn't finish him off. Now he can have a chance of like fighting back at you. And like so far, the McCree flashbang is almost like a sure kill against the Reaper. Even if you miss a couple bullets, it's just really easy once he's out of the stun to just like shoot him again, and then he's dead. But he heals so much that you might not be able to shoot him again. Like even if you shoot him after the flash fan, he might have enough health.
You'll have to test it because I'm still not a believer in this because your fan is so much faster than his shot.
There's some your Overwatch footage of them testing this out, and they tested at different like distances. McCree has to be like close to you and nail every shot to basically kill you in the fan, or hopefully have some other damage coming in. So that's what I'm saying. Like the only way now to kill Reaper is to like stun lock him with either like a flashbang, a Brigitte thing, Reinhardt can charge him, I don't know, some sort of incapacitation tool and focus him down like right then when it happens. Because if Reaper is not being focused, I don't think he's going to die unless you're just not getting your damage in. But in between Wraith form, reloading your guns, your ultimate reloading your guns, like you're going to be shooting all of the time.
Okay, the only thing I'll give and concede about people talking about Reaper changes is that the passive affects his ultimate. And
Dude.
Reaper's ultimate is disgusting with this change.
Dude, I think it was
terrifying.
I think it was Fissure that did this on stream. He went into like a PTR and just bought a bunch of pros and asked all of the pros to shoot at him at the same time. 6 heroes,
while he was doing it.
6 heroes just shooting at this Reaper like point blank, and his health didn't even drop a single bit, dude. He just killed everyone,
Yep.
and his health was untouched. Like, it basically, when he's ulting again, unless you stun him, he's not going to die.
Now let's back up, Andres, because you remember the Beyblade of season 3 as well as I do, because I was an Ana main in season 3, and you were probably playing a lot of McCree to stun the crap out of the Reapers that were coming at you. So Reaper Beyblade meta, if you guys have not been playing Overwatch for a long time, was regarding a composition that ran Ana with Lucio for support. It was probably one of the strongest comps outside of Dive that involved a 2-2-2 setup. So it basically, you would run a Reaper, and then I think you could run any DPS, but I think at the time it was probably Widowmaker or McCree, I think, or something like that, or the other one that you would run. And then you would run Reinhardt and Zarya. So Beyblade would basically run your Reaper with a speed boost, or have him like teleport somewhere and hide and wait for a fight. He would get the nano boost into a Death Blossom, and that was the Beyblade because he's spinning while he's doing it, so it looks like a Beyblade top from the anime. And then he would have the damage reduction. This is back when Ana's Ana's Nano Boost would also give a 50% boost to speed, so you would be moving ridiculously fast. You would have a speed boost from Lucio, and you would have a bubble for basically half of the total duration of your Beyblade and your whatever it's called, your Nano Boost.
Mm-hmm.
So during the first parts or the beginning stages of your Beyblade, you would still be getting full value of max damage, super fast speed, and mobility while being in your most vulnerable state because you'd have a bubble on you.
Yeah.
And then people started running, instead of running 2 DPS, they would run Diva just to matrix the crap out of it. So then he would just never die. You'd have a matrix and a bubble for him. He would be doing super quick speed. He would just run over people. It was just like literally having a train in Overwatch every time Reaper could hit Q. That's basically what ended up happening.
Reaper got like a huge buff. I think this is really like Blizzard saying like, okay, you know, we're not gonna be gentle with the Reaper buff anymore. We're gonna bring him in aggressively, and this is their choice. But to be honest, Reaper's probably going to be powerful. Reaper's gonna get some gameplay, like with this buff, like guaranteed. It's gonna be like the old Hanzo when he finally like got like a slight rework and he became like super popular, because you're actually gonna do a lot of damage. If people are running like tank heavy comps, you're actually going to be able to like do a lot of work with Reaper coming up. But that being said, this patch seems very aimed at just blow after blow to goats. And one thing to note is that they're not touching many of the goats heroes, aside from Brigitte basically saying, hey, you're only gonna have your ult for this fight. Next fight you're not gonna have it. Like having it on 30 seconds, if you activate it at the start of the fight, it basically guarantees
it makes ult economy actually matter. That's the big thing.
Right. By the time like you have defeated the team and the enemy has regathered and come back, your ultimate is probably done by that time. So it's like a one fight ult now.
It's too much of a snowball is basically what they're saying. They're saying, Brigitte, you need to stop snowballing the entire game based off of who wins the fight.
It actually gives you a
armor.
chance to kill that Zenyatta on your next push than like him having shields.
Also, it makes
and
the
armor.
brawls last a lot less amount of time against armor that are also getting dumped in.
Yeah, you don't have your team doesn't have
Xanatas.
to like poke him from a distance to try to get rid of the armor now to have a fair fight the second time around. They just won't have it. But that being said, that's the only actual nerf that Goats is having. If you look, well, I guess the Matrix is another big one too, and the armor.
The armor affects every target that Brigitte hits with armor. Rally affects the rallied armor targets, and then all of the armor changes also affect Diva, Reinhardt, Winston to a certain extent, and who else? Well, basically armored on anyone with shields, right? Symmetra, Zenyatta, and who's the other target?
They've definitely they basically just lowered
Zarya.
the defensive capabilities of goats while increasing the lethality of a bunch of other heroes like Reaper. But recently Bastion got a huge buff, and we've seen like the Bastion Symmetra comes just like starting to creep up and actually being really good against goats. Symmetra itself got a huge buff that it's actually pretty good against shield and barrier heavy team compositions that have a hard time like getting rid of her turrets as well. And low mobility, her teleporter like punishes that as well. So I think that overall has been like a slow tuning down goats, increasing the tools that you have against such health heavy, armor heavy compositions. And I don't think that goats is necessarily gonna go away, but I think that is definitely going to be a less of a no-brainer choice because now there's actually a lot of things that people can do against it, and yourself as goats have a little bit less survivability. Like Diva is still super powerful. Her matrix is still going to be super powerful, but that 2-second cooldown, you gotta be a little more picky of when you're activating it. You're gonna have to measure your stuff. But then again, it gives a greater window for the enemy to outplay you, for example, and find those like gaps in between your matrix to get the damage in. Your armor is not going to mitigate any more damage. Now you have Bastion, you get Reaper. All people you gotta be afraid of. I don't think we're gonna go into a Reaper meta though. Reaper is going to be
I think
good.
that's the important part, right? Like buffing Reaper and making him a little bit better with regards to his survivability doesn't make something meta. It doesn't make something common within the highest, levels of play. And as the same as it means that picking all of these heroes that's the meta comp doesn't mean that you're playing the meta. You know what I mean? It's kind
Right.
of the same thing. So it's not really easy to predict the meta when there's buffs and changes going out because something's power levels going down and then something else's power levels going up with regards to individuals and then like a whole system of armor changing. I don't think that there's any way that you can predict what's going to happen. It's just going to matter by which team is going to choose something that's different, and they're going to play it a lot because they think it's strong, and then they're going to win some major title, major tournament with that composition in a current patch. Then that becomes the meta. That's how it always works.
Well, and don't get me wrong, Reaper might make it into like competitive play, and there might actually be like some really cool strategies with him. And Beyblade might come back a little bit. Honestly, not the new Reaper. All he needs is like a bubble from Zarya when he's doing his ult, and he's good because then his biggest vulnerability is just getting stunned, right? Like he's not gonna die because of the lifesteal anymore. So the only thing is you just gotta protect him from the stuns, and he is good to go. Any damage boost works. Orisa, Mercy, Nano boost. So if you want to boost him damage, there's different options. If you want to protect him against stuns, there's only one. And one thing to keep in mind about Reaper is range is really good against him. Like Widowmaker, Pharah, McCree, Soldier, and even dive compositions like Genji and Tracer are quite effective against Reaper because Reaper lacks a lot of mobility. And more importantly than all those heroes can just choose not to engage Reaper. One of Reaper's biggest strengths is preying on heroes that can't really get away from him, right? Just coming out of the corner into like an unsuspecting Roadhog with his hook down and basically just going to town on him because he can't really get away from you. But any of those other heroes can just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna not care about you, Reaper. I'm gonna grapple away. I'm gonna boost away. I'm gonna blink away, and I'm gonna target your backline or somebody else, right? So you still have that ability to counterplay Reaper in that sense.
Now, there's some discussion going on in our Twitch chat right now about meta just at large, and I think it's important just to remember that even if something is meta, if we want to go back into that discussion, just because something is popular with a large swath of options in maps, it doesn't mean that it's going to be meta for every map. What is good in Overwatch has always been map contingent. And the biggest example of this is when you go and have a bunch of people pick and play Junkertown. For whatever reason, doesn't matter the meta, since the very first iteration of this and lots of success to having a Bastion or Risa comp on that map, it's still good. It's also still good to have like Rissa Hog and Double Sniper. So you have these weird compositions that are always good and quote unquote meta for a specific map. So when you're looking at what's good at any elo or at the Overwatch League and you're playing with a 6-stack every day in scrims, you're always needing to do the first of your homework, which is what map are we playing and how can we abuse sightlines and I guess you could even say just like environmental kills on that map, because that's basically what ends up happening.
Yeah. Although that being said, will you see Reaper a lot after the patch? Yeah. Will he be a pop stumper in certain games? Oh, absolutely. You will definitely see in the latter, I believe. And some people are gonna think like, what the hell is happening here? But I think there's gonna be a period of adjustment. I'm excited to see what happens, to be honest. Like Goats getting a hit, Reaper coming back, Bastion Symmetra being kind of meta too, McCree having some insane flashbang, Fan the Hammer things. And we also have Ash, who is like a completely different avenue you can take now. I think it's gonna be a shakeup for sure, a big one.
I'm glad you brought up Ash too, because like when we always think about what has been good in the past, like when we mentioned Beyblade Season 3, right? Those metas or those popular compositions that people were playing at the time were informed by what heroes they had available to them with the current balance that they had. So you have those two things that are in place, because Beyblade never existed in a realm where Orisa was even a consideration, where Doomfist or Sombra existed, where Ash and Bob's disruption was not even a consideration because it didn't exist. You know what I mean? And Wrecking Ball's CC and zoning wasn't around, and Moira's healing didn't exist. Your only options was like Mercy or Ana. Which one do you want to heal your your Beyblade? Because those are the only things you have. Now you have Brigitte, now you've got Moira, now you've got Wrecking Ball, and you've got Doomfist and Sombra to hack him. Like there's so many different things that you have to consider now that the roster is larger and there's more things for you to disrupt it with. Personally, if I were to sit down, Andres, if we want to predict like any one thing coming out of this, what would you say? Because for me, I personally think that there's going to be a big increase in Sombra showing up just at large, because I feel like Sombra, everything that Sombra shows up for is going to be disrupted by this change.
Sombra has been a really powerful hero already, and Sombra, it's one of those heroes that can really shut down a Reaper as well. Like neglecting him the ability to Wraith form out and just catching him off guard, man, you can really wreck a Reaper like that.
You can EMP counter his Beyblade too.
You can EMP counter the Beyblade too. So Sombra has been a solid choice throughout this meta so far. Like she's even decent at countering Goats, especially the Goats with Zenyatta and Zarya. You get rid of all the shields. You can kill the Zenyatta real quick. You can kill the Zarya real quick. They can bury you out. You know, they're basically locked out. So even against that, Sombra is like relatively decent. It's not as good as just battling Goats with Goats, but she has had a place, and I think she'll continue to have a place. I think we'll see definitely a little bit more Reaper. And I think that, I don't know, I have a feeling that dive or long range comps might be making an appearance. At this point, it's just so hard to tell because there's so many things that counter one another, right? And they're different and they're good against different things. Like dive, great against like very static compositions. They're taking a Bastion or something like that. Ooh, dive is nice. Or if they're taking a lot of squishies, a lot of like long range heroes, dive is great. If they're doing like Goats though, dive terrible. But then like static compositions like the Bastion Sim start looking like really appealing, or maybe like taking the Reaper, like that's nice. And then once you see that with, oh, you're playing Goats, since you see that against you, it's like, well, going range here like starts looking pretty appealing as well. You know what I mean?
I agree. There's lots of good things that we can choose nowadays. So, also, I would highly recommend that you go to the streams for Fran and for Emong to listen to what actually was said instead of a summary, so you can get full context for anything that we discuss here on the show, as well as checking out the resources that we've linked and the videos from Your Overwatch and Overwatch Central that they did on their research. I really appreciate creators doing things, even if their opinions are different than ours. It's always great to have resources in different formats and opinions going out. That's going to do it for pretty much everything this week. Let's go through our iTunes reviews and special thanks section of the show. We have Audio Directory from USA saying, great Overwatch strategy discussion from iTunes. Every Overwatch podcast I find seems to focus on professional play, but this one spends nearly all of its time on improving your personal game, which I love. Pro level is fine, but at least for me, I don't care about roster changes and team issues. I just want to know the strategies and the ability breakdowns. So on. So pro only matters to me in what they are doing tactically. Love the show and how active the community is. Great chemistry on the host and knowledgeable guests. You pretty
Thanks
much
so
just said what our goals were, like in tandem. So really, really appreciate that. Somebody likes exactly what we're trying to do in general. So really, really appreciate these iTunes reviews, as well as a great show and best Overwatch podcast coming in from Phil G 1991 in Ireland and B Brink 68 in USA. Thank you guys for your iTunes reviews. If you want to support the show for free, besides listening, giving us iTunes reviews is the best way to help us out. It means the world to us and helps us get to stay up in those top charts where people go into their search results and find us in Google, as well as in the iTunes search engine and other podcasting apps of choice. They love to weight the iTunes stuff that way. We also have Patreon. Andres, tell us a little bit about Patreon and how that can help us out.
Absolutely. If you guys want to support the show financially and help us get a boost over there, help us keep growing the show, attending events like BlizzCon and improving our gear, paying for hosting services for the show, etc., you can do so over at patreon.com/OmnicLab. We really appreciate it. We have an active community in there too, very dedicated fans. We thank you guys so much for believing in the show and helping us out there. We can't thank you enough. It's helped us out so much, just grow the show over the years and keep doing the projects that we've been trying to do and hopefully keep increasing them in quality and in scope. So if you guys want to keep us helping us over there, that's the place to do it.
And we have a few new people from last week. We said it live on the show, but just want to make sure that they got their usual cycle. We have Freakout, and Connell M is new to the team, and Connell M is signed up for a diamond, which is huge commitment, and we really appreciate this. Woo! I think he goes by Refire in the Discord, and he's been
he was
very,
here
very active
on our
since
last
joining.
episode.
So a very, very cool guy, and we really appreciate any support that you guys can give us. It's been kind of a downturn for us on the Patreon end since July, so we really, really would appreciate any support, especially moving into the new year with trying to get more guests and new events and upgrading equipment. For me, I've been doing stuff at the same rate, but prices don't change, but your income does. So we'll see you guys on the next week. If you guys want to find us in the middle of the week, you can actually, I need to shout out all of our diamond patrons. So besides Connell, we've got Top Score Solutions, Silver Loki, Solo from PS4, Jan Jinkle, Durandal, Roger B, Britmus, Shazir, Christoplaya, Tragic Zach, and Lissum and Matthew Z on our Patreon front. Thank you guys so much for supporting us at the highest level. You can support us at any amount that works for you on patreon.com/OmnicLab. If you want to find anything else, check the website. If you have questions about the show, check the website and then ask us, because it's probably there. OmnicLab.com/links. You can find anything you're looking for there. Andres, where can people find you?
If you want to find me, you can do so over at Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
You can find me on Twitter at the tag at NotRob, and my Hearthstone podcast at ValensChosen.com. We'll see you guys next week. And remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week, and good luck in 2019.
Thank you to everyone in the chat. You guys were super awesome today, super active. Sorry if I went on some rants today. I've had a lot of coffee and I've been coding all day, so I feel like my brain is just like going in every direction right now. Had an active chat today.
I have nothing more to teach you. The rest you must learn for yourself.
Meet the Ben. We love you too.
Doesn't happen often, but when it does, got a lot of people happy about it. That's for sure. Maybe moving forward, we'll see. Maybe we can change things up.
Bye, everyone.